I'll just call up Professor Maitri Datta. Hello, Professor Mukherjee. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Hello.
I'm just trying to call you. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, Professor Maitri Datta will be joining very soon. So, I think we would like to start right now. So, on behalf of Forum for Philosophy, I invite all of you to this book discussion. Forum has been conducting a series of lecture on Wittgenstein's Tractatus, and we are very close to end the series by September 22. So there are a few more lectures are to be conducted. So this is again the part of that series. So we are very happy to have this book discussion, and as we all know, the title of the book is Language, Limits and Beyond, Early Wittgenstein and Rabindranath Tagore, written by Professor Priyambada Sarkar. This book has been published by Oxford University Press in 2021, the late 2021. This is one of the recent publications. So I would like to introduce to all of you the speakers of this event. First, we will proceed with the discussants. The discussants are Professor Anirban Mukherjee, Professor Maitri Datta, then Nadia Roy, Professor Saidul Islam from Dhaka University. I'm not sure whether he has joined yet, but they are the speakers. Now, after these discussants give their remark on the books or share their point of views, then I would request Professor Priyambada Sarkar to respond to the discussants. After that, we will have an open discussion with other participants who are presented here. At the end, the event will be closed by Professor Indrani Sanyal, who will be chairing this entire event. She will speak at the end, and we will close the session. So before I request the speakers, I would like to introduce formally all the participants. I mean, all the participants in these discussions. They are the author, Professor Priyambada Sarkar, the chairperson, Professor Indrani Sanyal, then Professor Anirban Mukherjee, Professor Maitri Datta, Professor Saidul Islam, and Professor, not Professor, but Nadia Rai, one of the discussants. So, Professor Priyambada Sarkar is a professor of philosophy at University of Calcutta. Professor Sarkar specializes in, as you know, the philosophy of Wittgenstein, epistemology, and postmodernism. He has special interest also in reading ethics. Professor Sarkar completed her PhD from King's College London in the year 1986. Started her career in philosophy reading from Lady Bourbon College, University of Calcutta. So she is one of the distinguished members or the president of Ludwig Wittgenstein Philosophical Society, New Delhi, life member of British Wittgenstein Society, and fellow at IIS Simla. And it was during her tenure at IIS Simla from 2012 to 2014. This work was, I think, she carried out this particular work and published as a book. So, but before that, she has another very important book that is on Wittgenstein, of course, Wittgenstein and Solipsism. It is published in 2009 by Progressive publisher, Kolkata. She was also the co-editor of the Journal of Philosophy. So this is one of the brief introduction of our author of the book. Then I come to introduce our chairperson of this event, Professor Indrani Sanyal. She is a former professor of philosophy, Department of Philosophy, Jadavpur University, founder coordinator of the Center for Sri Aurobindo Studies in the Department of Philosophy, Jadavpur University, former editor of Jadavpur Journal of Philosophy and Darshana Bhiksha in Bengali. So her areas of specializations are philosophical logic, philosophy of language, particularly Western philosophy, Indian ethics, philosophy of Sri Aurobindo. And her noted works are, in 2015, she published a book on modality, essence, and possible worlds. In 2016, she had another work that is through the lens of Dharma ethics. Both are published from the Center for Advanced Studies, Jadavpur, Kolkata. And one of the forthcoming work is Sri Aurobindo on body, mind, and human condition. So this is the book which will be forthcoming. It is in the process. But two important papers that she has contributed very recently on Wittgenstein, and they are The Limits of Language and The Unlimited Beyond. This is actually published in 2015 in the volume Philosophy, Science, and Analysis. And another important paper is Some Observations on Builder's Language in 2010, the Journal of Indian Academy of Philosophy. So this is our brief introduction about Professor Sanyal, the chairperson of today's event. Then I come to introduce to you Professor Anirban Mukherjee. Professor Anirban Mukherjee is Professor of Philosophy at the Department of Philosophy, North Bengal University. Professor Mukherjee had his PhD from University of Reading and also has been a student of Jadavpur University, especially in cognitive science. Her area of specialization is Ludwig Wittgenstein, and he also takes interest and has published few papers in the area of aesthetics and continental philosophy, metaethics, and modern Indian philosophy. So one of the edited volume is Language and Ontology, which is published in 2007. He has been also the chairperson of the department from 2017 to 2019. And with that, I come to introduce to you Professor Maitri Datta, who is currently the Professor of Philosophy at Jadavpur University. and her areas of interest are metaphysics, philosophy of time, Buddhist philosophy, continental philosophy, and I found she has extensively worked in philosophy of time, and he has a lot of interest in metaphysics as well. So that is how she is here with us, and one or two papers which are very recent. I would only tell something about that to you. Time and some temporal relation, a Vaisheshika analysis, which has been published in this year at JICPR, Journal of Indian Council of Philosophical Research. Then the other paper is Classical Indian Dialectics, Refuting the Reality of Temporal Passes in Mula Madhyamika Karika and Khandana Khanda Kavya. That is, and this is published in Asian Philosophical Text, Exploring the Hidden Sources. So in 2020. One of the other discussants is Professor Saidul Islam, is an associate professor, Department of Philosophy, Jahangirnagar University, Dhaka. I'm not sure whether he has joined, Islam has joined with us or not, but he might join us soon. Professor Islam has did his master thesis in logic, and the title of the thesis is Limits of Arguments and Wittgensteinian Approach, from the Institute of Logic, Language and Computation, University of Notre Dame, Netherlands. And his areas of interest is Wittgenstein, Nagarjuna, logic, argumentation theory, philosophy of religion, philosophy of language, Buddhism, metaphilosophy. And some of the forthcoming publications are Wittgenstein and religious disagreements in Journal of Philosophy. Wittgenstein's analysis of religious language has been published in 2018. He has also written another paper on Wittgenstein's conception of philosophy in 2015. And another paper on Wittgenstein is Intercultural Debates and Deep Disagreements and Wittgensteinian Approach on Occam Academic Place, Ontario, 2020. This is the book which is part of Wittgenstein Society, Ludwig Wittgenstein's Society. Then I would like to introduce you to another discussant, Nadia Roy. Nadia Roy has completed her MA and MPhil from University of Kolkata with first class and distinction. Her special paper was on Immanuel Kant, and currently Roy is working with TCS, as she said. But she has not left her interest in philosophical studies. Some of the papers I would highlight, which highlights her philosophical projects as well. They are presented in different seminars and conferences. So, but her MPhil dissertation is on Heidegger, on care and temporality, which she submitted in 2017. And she also presented a paper in 2016 that is on early Wittgenstein and Kierkegaard, a shared domain of thought. And this was in Lucknow. The first Wittgenstein's conference was held there by Ludwig Wittgenstein Philosophical Society. Another paper she also wrote in 2016, that is Silence, Heidegger and Wittgenstein. So with this introduction, I would like to say a few lines about the book which has brought us here. That is the book titled Language, Limits and Beyond, early Wittgenstein and Rabindranath Tagore, and this is the book by authored by Priyambada Sarkar. The book has 5 chapters, excluding introduction and conclusion, very extensive bibliography with index. So these chapters are crisscrossing the threshold of language, early Wittgenstein and Rabindranath Tagore. In silence, there is eloquence. That's the 2nd chapter. And the 3rd chapter is the domain of the ineffable, the ethical and the aesthetic. The 4th chapter, that is the 4th chapter. And the 5th chapter is the king of the dark chamber and the remarks of early Wittgenstein and interpretation. So with these 5 chapters, the book has, as I mentioned to you, as a conclusion, and the central theme of this book is to provide us, a kind of a scope to talk about Wittgenstein's metaphysics, because as you know, metaphysics and metaphysical readings has been challenged by many philosophers, particularly during Wittgenstein time. It was the Vienna Circle, and the book begins with the Wittgenstein's remark, some of the remarks during his lecture at the Vienna Circle. So and later in 1991, we find that the resolute readers has also tried to sideline the metaphysical interpretation or metaphysics that is there in the Tractatus. So the book is actually trying to disclose the deeper understanding of Wittgenstein concerning some of the important concepts that the humanity deals with, that is about life, death, values, God. So these are the concepts which we often find in the study of metaphysics, and the author, Professor Priyambada Sarkar, is trying to show that there is a parallel between Wittgenstein while delving into the notion of the ineffable aspect of ineffable aspect of metaphysics, whether all metaphysical truth can be said, or something has to be passed over to silence. So what is the notion of silence, and how does ethics, if not ethics, aesthetics deals with it? And that is where Wittgenstein's reading of Tagore is very, very important. With this few lines, I would like to invite all our discussants, and we would like to start with Professor Mukherjee, and then we would go to Professor Maitri Datta, and if Professor Islam joins, then he would speak. Otherwise, we will invite Nadia Roy to share her views, and then if there is something to be responded by Professor Priyambada Sarkar, she will respond. Then we will open up to our other participants who are with us today. So Islam has joined. Thank you, Professor Islam, and I welcome you to this event. So with this, I request Professor Mukherjee to begin the discussion. Over to Professor Mukherjee.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, Thank you for this opportunity to speak on a book written by Professor Priyangvada Sarkar. When she was a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, I was also visiting Shimla as an associate, and I have had many conversations with her when she was busy writing this book, and she was there and she had a quarter and she invited us there also for a lunch. So we did have a lot of discussions regarding this book, not maybe directly what is there in the book, but general about Wittgenstein and other things. So it's a great feeling of pride that I'm part of this discussion. After the book has been published and it is there for the public to read. I read the book. In fact, I listened to the book for the last few days, and it was an interesting and a very good, enriching experience. I really enjoyed going through the different chapters. So first, I would like to share that that feeling of having read a good book. So then, the name itself is gives away the central thesis or the central concern of the book. This language, limit, and beyond. So in Wittgenstein's early work, Tractatus, there is a certain idea of language having limitation, which allows us to talk about certain things and to move over in silence regarding certain other things. So the language limits our ability to express, to communicate, to have a conversation. But then what lies beyond those limits and those limitations is also something that perturbs us. We are not we are not people to easily give way to others who, who create limitations for us. So this limitation which Wittgenstein creates, or Wittgenstein discovers or invents, or the limitation which is already there, which is a logical limitation, is something that we encounter, that Wittgenstein thinks we encounter. And but the thing is, any idea of limitation is about what is beyond those limits, what is beyond that cage. That also is something perturbing. So there are different ways in trying to understand the Wittgenstein of the early years. Some people say that language, the way Wittgenstein understands language, creates the limitation, and Wittgenstein is only concerned or gives importance to what is within that limitation, what is within the scope of the language that he thinks is the language of use, or language of clarity or unambiguity. And we have to just focus on that. Wittgenstein is actually trying to push everything outside the domain of the conversation. But there are others who think that there are things in the Tractatus which point to Wittgenstein actually putting more emphasis on what is outside those limitations. And Wittgenstein has certain propositions in the Tractatus where he helps to support that kind of a view, where he says that the point of the Tractatus is ethical, or the point of the Tractatus is to actually is to help us see the importance of what is not there in the Tractatus. So what is left out of the Tractatarian language is more important in a sense than what is there within the Tractatarian language. And the Tractatarian language is a way of talking about what is not being talked about in the Tractatus. So this name, this language, limits and beyond, is very appropriate to the concerns that that Priyangvada deals with in this book. And over here, in dealing with, there are many books which deal with this issue, but Priyangvada does something very interesting in focusing on Tagore and Wittgenstein in her dealing of this concern. So there aren't any, I think many, there aren't books about Tagore and Wittgenstein in such detail. And it's like, of course, Wittgenstein, the number of books that have come out on Wittgenstein are numerous, and people have written about many aspects of Wittgenstein, sometimes very insignificant aspects of Wittgenstein. They have been converted into big books. And and all those insignificant or quote unquote insignificant might be significant in some ways for understanding Wittgenstein. So, but Priyangbada, what she says is in the that Tagore was an important influence on Wittgenstein in different ways, and Wittgenstein was aware of Tagore's work. Tagore was translated into German during the period that Wittgenstein was writing Tractatus, and the later period after Wittgenstein wrote the Tractatus. So through that period, Wittgenstein was aware of Tagore's work. He is known to have read Gitanjali and Raja, but he might be aware of other works. We don't know, because many of his works at that point of time were available in German, and Tagore himself had visited Germany a couple of times. Tagore received the Nobel Prize in 1913, and so by the time Wittgenstein is writing those books, the Tractatus, he was already had got the Nobel Prize, and so that was the post Nobel Prize phase, which in a Nobel Prize brings some amount of being famous to a person. So at that point of time, Rabindranath Tagore, one of the, I think the first Asian to get a Nobel Prize in literature, was read with some importance and given some importance, and he was translated into German. So the German public had access to him. And Priyangbada mentions in her book, I think there are 1 million copies of the translated work were sold. So it seems that it was also quite popular among many Germans to read Tagore. So Tagore was not something very unknown to Wittgenstein. Tagore was known. So there in this book there is an interesting it's an interesting read, and it connects the ideas of Wittgenstein and Tagore, and takes us on a detailed journey through their early experiences and how they developed as philosophers, as poets, as artists, and how their journeys or their views connect with each other. And I think that another thing that it kind of does well is to not always trace on the fact that Wittgenstein was very much influenced by Tagore. So Wittgenstein might have been influenced by Tagore. There might be some elements of the Tagorean philosophy or way of doing poetry, art, his purpose in doing art, that might have influenced Wittgenstein. But I think Priyangbada is also very cautious in pointing out in different chapters that it might be just a kind of